My name is Mohammed, Wohaibi has been introduced. I would like to thank Marine Money for giving me the chance to speak all of you. I don't claim to be the marine guy, but I'm a fuel specialist. Oh, I hear myself very well. Do you hear me? Okay. Now, the theme of my presentation is about how to maximize revenue. To the industry, making money and continues to make money with the challenges or the added variable, you need an added equation or an added information to solve the system and continue thriving in the field. So I'm going to go directly to the point, or let's say the summary of my presentation. It's really the question itself at the beginning and how to address it. We in MAWETAL address it in two ways. In the fuel cost, we have a way of making a fuel that is even lower than LNG price, landed LNG. And amazingly, it's also with less carbon footprint because of the simplicity to make the fuel out of it. I know most of you are not experts in the field. I don't know whether I should say it or make it as a conclusion, but none of you is, I believe, in the refining. I grew in all of my career inside the conventional box of refining. And this is a step-out approach to addressing marine industry, aviation, and power generation systems. The other way is thinking out of the box. You keep thinking, you're thinking limited to the ship itself. How can we do this? How can we do that? And the challenges are like additional load on the ship that might sink it one day. If you think outside the box, you might find a solution for the issue associated with marine. Now, me coming from refining, its margins. How to make a barrel of ultra-low sulfur diesel or MGO or kerosene out of crude. So this is price relative of to crude, everything to crude. Brent, for example, if Brent is price relevant to Brent itself is 1. Diesel must make you money to make a margin out of the refining. Our solution is to take what's been rejected by marine or the high sulfur fuel oil, polish it, and add to it condensate or light tight oil, which both of them are lower feedstock than crude, and make the novel fuel, which will cost you less than MGO. Now, you will say, okay, this is still fossil fuel. This doesn't address the issue of my ESG. Well, we're coming later to that solution. So we're a heavily patent company, technology developer, with more than 140 patents globally, including 6 in Singapore today. So just to take you in a simple way, if you think of the refining itself, let's say we need to process the residue that makes the high sulfur fuel oil, because ultimately there is no demand for it. This is the margin what the refiner will make from the fuel cost all the way to the white products. But the problem is, remember EVs. Where will he sell with the challenge, the growing challenge of EVs to the barrel? So his rate of return is going to be different. While the way we process, the way we take the same residue and process it to polish it, we add to it an equal volume, give or take, of light tight oil or condensate. So we're going to make out of the basic volume of residue that's kicked out by marine, double the amount of fuel, which means now the money part is the area under the curve, let's say. It's the total amount of money of volume times margin. So if you aggregate this, you see that with the same investment, you're going to make more products of barrels because of the formulation of the fuel, and you're going to emit less CO2 because you're processing only one part of the barrel, not the 2 parts. So our barrel, if you put the constituents of what's in it, it's actually from C3, propane, all the way to de-asphalted oil beyond the corner there. So it has everything in the barrel. The processed part, thank you, the black box, and the blended part. which is the condensate or light tight oil. I'm just trying to say, to show that you can, by blending the two components, the polished and the wellhead component together, you can reach to produce the fuel. Now, I took a contractual price, 20 years contractual price of LNG from the US all the way to a country in the Far East. And I took the value, contractual value that was reported. And I want to compare liquid to gas. I have to make it on a thermal basis, fuel oil equivalent basis, a 5.8 million BTU per fuel oil equivalent barrel. I reach with the transportation cost of LNG, just landed cost on cost basis, liquid, my fuel versus LNG. It's $102.8. And my fuel, just because of the formulation I showed you up front, is less than crude, less than Brent itself, which is, if we imagine it as a fuel, is a dirty one. So I did the study over the power plant consuming 3 million tons per annum of LNG, an equivalence of 75,000 barrels a day of my fuel. It's a $0.5 billion saving on fuel cost. Moving forward, now this is something that the gentlemen and the ladies and the gentlemen participating in the panels and the presentations, I think they set the stage for this one. I took a ship with an onboard, I took a ship with an onboard carbon capture system on it, and I added some fuel penalty because this onboard carbon capture system needs electricity and steam to run. Now, this ship, during voyage, is actually, I took it over 1 megawatt of power load on the ship. And that is used as, for example, as a propulsion load on the ship. So at the port, there will be, or inland, there will be a power plant consuming some fossil fuel, and that is emitting so much of CO2. I picked up coal, the highest one. You can pick up anything. The blue cells can be changed. You can do the analysis yourself. Now, when the ship is at the port, then we have the other novel concept of harbor repowering initiative, which is basically a contrary to cold ironing. Cold ironing is for the ship to be supplied by the port by electricity. We are reversing it, saying the ship can play an integral role with the global energy grid. Anywhere, at any port, ship can sell its electricity generated by its electrified system. And what happens with that, you're not only capturing now the carbon that is generated by burning the fossil fuel on the ship, you are also avoiding the carbon that's emitted by a coal-fired power plant for the same megawatt. So this is a new novel concept, and I hear people talking about today, and I hear it in other sessions from other agents that marketing our technology somewhere else, that nuclear power plants think of now selling electricity, or people thinking about nuclear as a solution to the global marine fleet is saying, sell electricity to the port. Well, it's a good idea, but intellectually it's 8 years old. I mean, we have superseded a long time ago envisioning how marine market can solve the issues. Marine market, in my humble and simple opinion, cannot solve the issue by caging itself inside the shipping box today, just thinking about it as it used to. It has to change. It has to think of electrifying the ship. It has to think of how to interact with the grid. And this way, you can leverage any investment that you do by capturing more carbon or avoiding more carbon. This is a credit to the ship and the system and its integration with the global grid. So this is our arena compared to the existing arena. We decarbonize across the whole chain, from well to wake. We decarbonize the way we process the hydrocarbon components to make the fuel, the novel fuel. We decarbonize because our novel fuel simulates diesel. Though it is broader range, as you have seen, than diesel. It's not only the narrow diesel range. It's everything in the barrel except the impurities. And electrified system will have a different weight than the conventional diesel system that everybody knows. And I don't care whether somebody uses a gas turbine to electrify the ship or a diesel engine producing electricity. That's a choice of the shipper. Now, Harbor Repowering Initiative, which I showed, is also now integrated to the global grid, which have a decarbonization across the board. Now, everybody knows about this. This is coming in 2025. It's the EU rule on any inward coming ship to the European ports. Well, good, somebody is raising the sword, but it's only one-sided blade, saying if you exceed emissions, I'm going to lash you with taxes. What about if I reduce my carbon? Would somebody give me money because I reduced the emission? This, in my opinion, is making carbon emission a transboundary issue, saying no matter where you produce the carbon, as long as you're coming to my port, you're going to be subject to tax. And I'm not saying I'm the regulator, but I'm just asking the question. If this is bad, what about if I do the good? Would I be rewarded a carbon credit for what I emitted somewhere else just because my ship is visiting one of your ports? By the way, through discussion between us and DMV, prior to this rule, we argued and forced the case, but the regulation came on only one side of the sword, not the two sides. Where do we patent? Most of the globe, especially here in Singapore, because the largest bunkering hub, and Rotterdam, Europe, Russia. You see the list of the countries on the right. And we focused only also on state flagships nations like Liberia, like Panama, and the Marshall Islands, because most of the ships are members of these 3 state flags. So we have, that's the scope of, and this is also for distribution of who owns the ships and which sea liners. Just a sample of our patents. And this is our fuel. Our fuel is actually lower and supersedes IMO 0.5 sulfur cap that's implemented on open seas for all ships. We filed our patents 9 days before IMO decided back in October 27, 2016. We filed the patents. We went down in sulfur to 0.05 weight percent, which is 10 times lower than MGO today, or very, very low sulfur fuel oil, which is 0.5. And we have very low carbon footprint across the chain compared to any liquid fuel that is used today by marine industry. You, marine industry, thank you very much. I end up my presentation here. But the last word is nobody can force anything on you. We cannot force our technology through anybody. But I really urge you to do the math, do the analysis. And we can interact, we can help as much as we can without disclosing much of our know-how, help you do the evaluation. If I want to continue in the future on fossil fuel, and I'm really not advocating because I'm a citizen of Saudi Arabia, advocating for Saudi oil. I'm a US company, and I'm advocating, I'm a friend of the marine industry, not the enemy. Historically, marine industry was trashed, the remain of the barrel, and go and burn it somewhere else nobody's watching. Now, the pressure is coming, the awareness is coming, the environmental pressure is coming, and we want you to help because it's difficult to electrify ships. It's difficult to electrify, by the way, also aviation. And power on fossil fuel is needed to back up the grid. So through the marine interaction with the grid, you are availing very low cost backup to expanding renewable in land. So in other words, we are making fossil fuel also support expanding inland renewable. Because usually people, if they want to expand, they have to make sure that they have the backup for it. Somebody will just build a backup for 1 month of the year or 2 months where it doesn't cut off. So the system you've seen before now opens another chance of opportunity because now you could think of it as 2 owners of the ship. One owns the hull, the sea liners, and the engine and the carbon capture system is now owned by PowerCo, local PowerCo, international PowerCo, where they can get into agreement where the fuel is now becoming the responsibility of the power plant owner, and he sells electricity indexed to crude to the ship while it's voyaging, and at the port shift the power load to the grid. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I thank you for listening and giving me the time to present.